that liberal individualism only works when the collective is so well established that you can take it for granted. As long as the self-evident truths remain self-evident, then you can have something like a liberal individualism.
Now, if you claim you understand what Peterson just said,
you're a liar and you will spend an eternity on this ship.
Wow. A ton of stuff just started to make sense to me.
Oh, this video is gonna be fun, isn't it? Just some guy. Truth be told, I like the bloke. He's like a human piñata. Every time you break out the sticks, he rains down subs and views, and a good time is had by all. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with this figure, he's a culture content creator, most infamously known for three things: losing his mind over the Florida Don't Say Gay bill, which is kind of suspicious, come to think of it, defending, let's say, some disturbing pieces of film that would in any other sane period land you in prison, and of course, getting annihilated by Nick Recader. However, the one thing Just Some Guy is supposedly good at is Lord of the Rings and the works of Tolkien. But after watching this video though, I got the impression supposedly good at Lord of the Rings and the works of Tolkien pretty much means the kid has encyclopedic knowledge of the source material, but that's really as far as it goes. Because anyone familiar with Just Some Guy knows this: the kid's Achilles heel is politics. I don't know why, but whenever politics is mentioned in anything, it's like someone lodged a boomerang in his head. He's like someone who can handle an electric stove pretty well. However, ask him to use an open flame and he will somehow manage to set himself on fire. Given numerous past videos, especially the ones with V, he simply doesn't understand the philosophy thereof. If he's read any political theory, it's clearly far above his intellectual pay grade. Nothing went in. Hell, after this video, I'm convinced he can't understand abstract thought either. So he tried to do a video on one of Dave Rubin's catalog called Why the Good Liberals Cannot Rule. Interesting choice to use the word rule and not govern, isn't it? But anyway, anyone sane near me on the political scale already knows where this is going to go. I mean, if Dave Rubin can grasp a concept and you don't, that is quite an indictment, because Rubin is no intellectual heavyweight by any means. And Just Some Guy made a video on that one where he faceplants gloriously called Jordan Peterson Doesn't Understand Tolkien. And frankly, this video can also be titled Just Some Guy Knows Fuck All. Because what Jordan does in this video is rather basic. He discusses the reality of any civilization apolitically, and then simply uses Lord of the Rings, because the story is well known, as reference points. And that's all. Now, Just Some Guy, on the other hand, because he's a fucking idiot and utterly obsessed with regime faction wars, cannot understand this. I don't know if it's because he's obsessed with the team aspect of politics, he's engagement farming, or he's really just that thick, but instead of understanding anything Jordan says, he tries to pull off the actually meme and waffles off a load of Lord of the Rings lore that has nothing to do with Jordan's civilization analysis. The irony, of course, being the geekier he gets into the lore, the more he misses the point entirely and increasingly looks more and more like a dork. But anyway, let's crack on.
Jordan Peterson. I might have known. One of my friends sent me a link to this video of Peterson talking about hobbits.
I don't believe that for a second. You have friends?
And not since Gondor in Transition have I seen such an unbelievably uninformed analysis of Tolkien's works. Even for Jordan Peterson, it's a doozy. But Peterson isn't the first to have this kind of commentary. I've noticed in the last few years, especially since The Rings of Power came out, that there's been an uptick of interest in Tolkien's stories. Lots of people cosplaying as fans, constantly commenting on his works, repeating something they saw on social media but clearly knowing nothing about the books, never reading them, many of them not even watching the movies. Now, I'm a geek, and proud of it, so I'm used to encountering posers and tourists, and normally I wouldn't care since they don't get much traction.
Okay, that answers my earlier pondering. He's engagement farming. Do continue, young nitwit.
But lately it's gotten ridiculous because many of these people use Tolkien as a weapon in their culture war. They're taking his works completely out of context, twisting his words to fit their narrative so they could stick it to the other side.
No, that's not what he's doing here at all, but you'll see in a few moments.
And what annoys me most isn't them bastardizing his works, it's that they're missing his point.
Oh dear lord, the irony is just delicious.
Tolkien wrote about something core to the human experience, something unfortunately still common in today's world, but that's completely lost on these people because they're too busy trying to tie Tolkien into their political minutiae, as if what he wrote had anything to do with their culture war.
It's like he reached the top of the cliff and thought, no, I need something even taller to throw myself off of. This is something that I've noticed with Just Some Guy. He frequently starts off with this arrogant chest thumping and then proceeds to drown because his ego is a damn anchor. I don't understand why he does that. He just looks like a twat for it.
If people spend all their time trying to impose their message onto Tolkien's works, they're gonna miss what he was saying. To which Jordan Peterson went, challenge accepted, and delivered this.
And Just Some Guy made this very video trying to impose his Spurgeon nerd out onto Peterson, completely missed the point, and showed he has no intellectual capacity to understand basic societal analysis whatsoever.
In the story of the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, so the Shire is full of, well, let's call them liberals.
You sure you want to go with that? Do you really want to argue that the hobbits, particularly the longtime ring bearers Bilbo and Frodo Baggins, represent the left? After all, there's a trait that makes the hobbits notable in the story. In fact, the fate of the world hinges on this trait, and it's what I'm sure you never attribute to anyone on the left. So, are you sure you want to go with this argument?
You see what I mean with this overly pedantic tediousness? The first words out of his mouth and already he didn't listen to a single thing of what Jordan just said. Peterson is talking about hobbits as a collective, hence why he said the Shire is full of hobbits. Plural. And this dope for some reason brings up the two most exceptional ones. Not only does he ignore the collective and uses Bilbo and Frodo as examples, but he confuses liberals with leftists. Given that Tolkien was an Englishman, the distinction is important. Again, not that Just Some Guy would understand any of this, of course.
They're hobbits, and they're all pursuing their own thing, and they think their little kingdom is everything.
Kingdom? What kingdom? There's no kingdom. The Shire isn't a kingdom.
Again with the dripping pedantic. He doesn't mean it literally, you pleb. What the hell is wrong with you?
And the hobbits don't think the Shire is everything, and they don't think they're better than everyone else.
That's a leftist trait, not a liberal one. This is a good lesson for you people. Do not be a smug git when the foundation of your argument is incorrect. You run a very, very high risk of being wrong about everything else.
Stop projecting. The hobbits live in the middle of nowhere, so they're largely ignored by the rest of the world, and they're happy to be ignored. They're not interested in wars or conquest. They've never even fought amongst themselves, and generally they get along with different races, although they do tend to avoid big folk, humans. The hobbits are just trying to live their lives. This is in the prologue of the book and the first 10 minutes of the film after the title. Did you not read or watch either of them?
Show me on the doll where the words of Peterson violated you. Where does he dispute any of that?
I understand sticking to your self-righteous anti-left narrative.
Again, culture war faction mindset, and he keeps mistaking leftist and liberal as synonymous. His dimwittery is actually irritating me.
You know, the borders are protected by the Striders. Aragorn is one of them, and it turns out that he's the descendant of ancient kings.
Correction, it's Rangers, not Striders.
Shut up, you dork. Let him finish his point.
As long as the perimeters are defended by the descendants of ancient kings, then there can be freedom inside the walls.
I do love the way he's taken the filmer position. Freedom is a gift of kings. And true, this is how any civilization works. The borders and lands must be defended from barbarians. Now let's see how Just Some Guy manages to once again miss the point entirely.
Tell me you don't understand Tolkien without telling me you don't understand Tolkien.
Case in point. How is he this stupid? He's describing defense of territory, and a more complex point we'll get to later on. Have you never played Age of Empires, kid? Oh wait, there's only Europeans and Asians. You probably didn't feel adequately represented.
The reason the Dunedain protect the hobbits has nothing to do with protecting some utopic concept of freedom.
Oh, I'm just gonna skip this bit because this is legit pissing me off.
When it comes to Peterson implying that the hobbits represent the naive left,
He's talking about liberals, not leftists, you I'm cutting off massive chunks of this video because he's just rambling on and on about the law, which has nothing to do with anything Peterson is saying.
So what is Peterson getting at? Well, to understand that, we need to go back to how he got here, which is that both he and Dave Rubin were taking potshots at the left.
No, they weren't. And you can probably guess that by the fact that he can't distinguish leftist from liberal.
Which led Peterson to explain how he used to think of himself as a British liberal, even though he's Canadian.
Because Canada belonged to the British Empire, you clueless wanker. Why do you think they speak English?
But changed his mind over the last 8 years because now he thinks this.
That liberal individualism only works when the collective is so well established that you can take it for granted.
By God, I think the boy's got something.
As long as the self-evident truths remain self-evident, then you can have something like a liberal individualism.
Now, if you claim you understand what Peterson just said,
You're a liar, and you will spend an eternity on this ship.
Jordan Peterson's ramblings make religious doctrine look like field-tested hard science.
And it was at this very moment that I realized just some guy is an idiot. I forgot he's also a secular atheist, and therefore his worldview amounts to gather resources and shag. Given his previous attempts to tackle politics, in which he failed miserably, I don't know why I expected him to be smarter, but anyway, let me explain. A society needs some foundational values, societal norms, beliefs, defense of customs and traditions, the family unit, a fitting hierarchy, kingship, ways of beings that are products of time and culture. In essence, the nature of things that provide society stability. So these self-evident things are the foundational aspects of society which have been taken for granted. That's all he meant. How any of this escapes you is astonishing to me.
I don't have the patience to deal with that right now.
I said that every time I watch one of his videos.
However, that nonsense leads to Dave Rubin making this smug, condescending claim.
The audacity of you attempting to chastise anyone for being smug and condescending is rich enough to put a damn rhino into a diabetic coma. Now you all tell me if you find any of what Dave is about to say condescending. In the slightest.
It's basically as long as the conservatives are holding the door from the barbarians, then the liberals can be liberal.
Exactly that.
And that's how a functional society should work.
Yes, that's literally how any sane society maintains order, cohesion, and continues on.
No.
Actually, yes. If you disagree with this, you're just wrong. It's not up for discussion. This is objective reality.
That's not how it should work. That's not how it actually works.
Yes, that is how it actually works, you ignorant dimlo. You're just delusional and thick. Given how wrong he is about everything political, there's really no point in explaining why. Especially not to my audience, it's rather self-evident. Well, that and he hasn't actually said anything heavier than I disagree. Because reasons.
And no one with a functioning brain would ever think that would work.
I legitimately don't believe he has an IQ above 95. These are basic foundations of even a primitive tribe. What the hell in his mind maintains social cohesion then? Is he going to tell us? Hell no.
Which explains why these words fell out of Rubin's mouth. It's also telling that Rubin doesn't think about what he says.
No, that's just you projecting because you're too imbecilic to understand this conversation. What Rubin said is perfectly valid, actually. You, on the other hand, are just coping, going no, and so far providing no counter-alternative thesis here.
Because if he could think more than one step ahead, then he'd realize who the right has considered to be the barbarians at the gate in the past. It wasn't that long ago that this was 6-year-old Ruby Bridges because she dared to integrate a white school.
And who exactly benefits from forced integration, Do tell, because you can hammer on about the immorality of segregation all you want, but saying forced integration is any more moral, I am going to stand in opposition to that. It's nothing more than one power going, your way of life is irredeemable to the current social fabric, and therefore we deem it morally justified to destroy it in order to usher in our ideals. It's a zero-sum game because it's forced. And how has that turned out? Colonialism brought civilization. Why is the entire world allowed to enter our spaces? By what authority do they have the right to do this? What do they offer our civilizations? Or to use Lord of the Rings as an example, what does Frodo see when he looks into the mirror under the watchful eye of Galadriel? The Shire is no longer the Shire when it's overrun by orcs, because they aren't the same as hobbits. What could this possibly be an allegory for, I wonder?
Or you can go and talk to Dave Rubin's people, the gay men who lost all their friends to the AIDS crisis in the 80s because the Reagan administration wouldn't help them because they thought the gays were getting what they deserved.
I mean, if rampant, unprotected sex could land you in lethal death waters and you still keep gambling with your life doing it, any ill consequences that befall you is very much your own doing.
It's doubly telling, though, because Rubin seemingly forgot, or maybe he never knew, that the Enlightenment principles that created the liberal individualism he's trashing led to the French and American revolutions.
Which were objectively bad, especially the French one. Look up the Reign of Terror, you dillweed.
2 bloody wars in which it was the liberal-minded people who held the door from the barbarian monarchists, nobles, and aristocrats who wanted to continue to exploit the masses.
No, they held the door open for a new power block of savages to pillage the place in a violent power struggle. And look at the bloody mess France was in following that revolution. Again, look at the Reign of Terror. Hell, look at the current state of France, or any aspect of Europe absent their monarchs. To quote Ledeen, for the average person, all problems date to World War II, for the more informed to World War I, for the genuine historian to the French Revolution.
But Rubin's statement is what leads Peterson to mention the hobbits, which makes this triply telling because Peterson doesn't realize, or probably doesn't know, that it's not men who defeat the great evil. It's hobbits.
No, it isn't. It's a collective effort from multiple men, and elves, and a dwarf, and hobbits. Hell, the ring only gets destroyed because a demented gargoyle of a creature tries to take it from Frodo at Mount Doom.
Take someone like Boromir. Peterson would view him as a classic hero.
As he now proceeds to strawman Peterson and makes a whole bunch of claims Jordan never said.
The warrior, the leader of men, the quintessential noble, virtuous, conservative man who gets turned out by the One Ring faster than a teenager at a Matt Gaetz party.
You just couldn't help yourself, could you?
The ring turned Boromir out the moment he saw it. Meanwhile, it took a year, a whole calendar year, for the ring to break Frodo. 18 years if you count the time he had it but didn't use it. Bilbo had the ring for half a century and it barely affected him. Think about that.
It's like he's having a different conversation, isn't it? What does any of this fluffing horse shit have to do with Jordan's point about the established collective? Nothing. Nothing at all. At this point, he's a schizo talking to padded walls. Also, do tell, what was Smeagol? He killed his cousin moments after laying eyes on the damn ring, much faster than Boromir tried to take it from Frodo. It's such crap to use Boromir as the susceptible human, sing the praises of the hobbits collectively, but using the apex of their race, yet neglecting to mention the most susceptible one who killed for it.
Like I said at the beginning, is Peterson sure he wants to claim the hobbits represent the left?
For the millionth time, you colossal halfwit. They represent liberals, not leftists, liberals. The Shire and hobbits would be irreparably changed should the barbarians storm the walls. This is literally represented in the Fellowship. How is this flying over your head?
Meanwhile, the hobbits, who Peterson claims represents the left, are harder to corrupt, less tempted by greed and power, more resilient to the trials and tribulations of the world.
These are people who can't define women, are more prone to mental illness, and think the state needs more power to combat the weather. And during the Red Sniffle season, they were more than happy to exercise power over others at the expense of personal autonomy. Anyone who thinks the left is harder to corrupt and less susceptible to greed and power is fucking insane.
And prove to be braver and more courageous than anyone ever expects. Again, was Peterson sure this was the argument he wanted to make? Because it doesn't look like it's working out in his favor.
One last time, Jordan never said or even implied any of this. This is yet another example of a leftist, one of many, who lives up to the stereotype that they understand nothing about the right.
I agree with Peterson that it's important to protect the gates of our society. But we should also remember that gates aren't only built to keep people out. They're often built to keep people in.
That's a prison, you moron.
And we should always be wary of the person so eager to be the gatekeeper. But what do I know?
Evidently bugger all. Let me sum up this little video, if for no other reason other than needing to find something amusing here to keep the blood from shooting out of my ears. You know how long the Lord of the Rings section was of that Rubin video? Less than 40 seconds. The overall time of footage he took from that video? About 101 seconds. His video is over 12 minutes long. Over 12 minutes of nonsensical rambling that was damn near entirely divorced from anything Peterson said. You know, I should have realized the moment he conflated liberals with leftists, this video was going to end up a train wreck. It's no wonder he didn't counter anything Peterson said with any real depth, because he failed to understand a single allegory in the entire conversation. The irony of all of this, though, is Jordan Peterson is a lot closer to just some guy than he is to me. That kid wouldn't know real conservatism if it bonked him square across the bonds. Cheers for watching, and once again, I apologize for nothing.